Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gary Smith. I am the incoming chair of the Board of Trustees of the American Craft Council, and it's my pleasure to join our Executive Director, Sarah Schultz, in welcoming you to the San Francisco Craft Week. I'm a longtime Bay Area resident and an even longer term member of the ACC, and my wife's history with the ACC even goes back as far as the Rhinebeck shows. So we've had a long and very fruitful relationship with the ACC that I'm very proud about and happy to be sharing with so many of you here today. One thing we've learned recently is that there's nothing like a global pandemic to spark creativity. So what we've got here today that the ACC team has created for you is something that we hope you will enjoy all of this week. It's part craft show and part virtual party with some of our wonderful ACC craft artists. We hope you'll find it fun and engaging, and that you'll come away from the experience enlightened, enriched, entertained, and possessed of a few new wonderful handmade objects by some of your favorite makers, and some you may not even know yet. This is an experiment and a prototype of one of the kinds of things that we'll be doing to carry forward our mission of championing craft in this new world. We'd love your feedback and your financial support. Please support the artists and the makers who are part of the show with your purchases and your words of encouragement. It will mean a lot to all of us. So have fun and enjoy the week. And now, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Gary. And thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon or early evening, depending on your time zone. I'm Sarah Schultz. I am the Executive Director of the American Craft Council. And I wanted to begin today by just saying, to think in the past, if this were a year ago, we would be gathering together at this moment at Fort Mason for one of the 4 great American craft shows. We would be looking over the water, we would be talking with artists, we'd be discovering new work, and we'd probably peel off every once in a while to grab something fabulous to eat at the farmer's market or Green's restaurant. But this is not the present. And today, literally, the world is on fire in San Francisco, or the sky is quite orange. And I wanted just to take a moment to acknowledge everyone in San Francisco and California and say our hearts are going out with you and our good wishes. My media feed today has been filled with pictures of strange orange skies. And indeed, we find ourselves in a strange time. We've all experienced a series of momentous events that have left us reeling and propelling us into new realities. The pandemic has taken a huge toll not only on our public health and economy, but our deeply felt sense of connection to one another and well-being as individuals and communities. For artists who rely not just on in-person events to make a living, but the personal and close relationships they develop with their enthusiastic supporters, the pandemic has upended not just a livelihood, but a way of living. Concurrently, the collective uprisings and growing and necessary acknowledgement of the traumas of institutional and structural racism have called us to hold ourselves accountable and be clear and true about our own roles and responsibilities to building a more inclusive, just, and equitable world. ACC is a national nonprofit with an educational mission to champion craft. But what does that mean, and what does that look like in this present? That is part of what we'll explore tonight. For ACC, this means we will embrace the challenges at hand and invest in people and programs we believe will nurture and build a healthy craft ecosystem for new generations. We'll continue to work and build and support craft economies and create new opportunities for artists to thrive, such as this Craft Week, and our return eventually to in-person shows. We will work to be vibrant storytellers and public advocates and a voice for the vitality of contemporary craft and the incredible organizations and individuals who are doing and making the work through things like American Craft Magazine and a growing array of digital content. We'll continue to act as stewards of craft histories, both past and future, through supporting scholarship, research, and honoring the legacies and contributions of skilled makers. And we will galvanize craft's social and civic potential by investing in supporting the diverse ways the craft is practiced and shapes and heals communities and culture. We acknowledge that we are all teachers and we are all students. And in partnership, we will learn together and from each other to realize new and better things as a community. And to achieve this, we all must support and participate. And that you'll see that that is a common theme of tonight's program. And while we cannot gather together in San Francisco, we do gather together in this virtual space as friends and as fellow enthusiasts to support our artists, to hear how they are responding and reimagining the world, and to thank them for their resilience and brilliance, and hopefully bring something beautiful and handmade into our homes and our lives that spark that much needed joy. We are kicking off this first craft week with a series of short conversations with 7 artists, curators, and cultural leaders who will talk about craft in this moment and in the Bay Area. And to formally open the program, I would like to read a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are something that have become a growing part of the American Craft Council's practice, both because we want to address and be mindful of colonial legacies, but also craft is inherently related to and about and values that kind of those generational connections and deep roots that we have with the past and an honoring of the past. And so I'd like to begin by saying the American Craft Council is broadcasting San Francisco Bay Area Craft Week from its Minneapolis headquarters, residing on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people, lands ceded in the treaties of 1837 and 1851. We also acknowledge this project is rooted in the Huichin and Yelamu, and also known as Oakland and San Francisco, on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone and Yelamu Ohlone peoples. Now I'm pleased to introduce to all of you and open the event tonight with Corey Pemberton and Morgan Walker, who we were honored to work with as curators to help curate a new group of artists and introduce a new group of artists to ACC. We are very committed to amplifying and telling more inclusive narratives, and we are very indebted to both curators in helping ensure that we center more voices in works by artists of color. Corey and Morgan got together earlier to discuss what they're seeing in the craft world right now, the artists they have curated, and what they're excited about in the virtual marketplace. By way of background, Morgan Walker is a creative producer who has created Make Do Market, a very vibrant marketplace that supports Black women entrepreneurs. And Corey Pemberton is an artist who currently divides his time between painting studio and production glass blowing in Los Angeles. He also is one of the co-founders of Crafting the Future, which is an organization I encourage you all to seek out if you don't know of it, and I'm sure he'll be talking about it tonight, which works to diversify the fields of art, craft, and design by connecting BIPOC artists with opportunities that will help them thrive. So here to speak with us, Corey and Morgan.
Hey Morgan, so good to see you today. It's been
Hi Corey,
a
good
pleasure.
to see you too.
Yeah, it's been really good working with you on this project. I'm excited to talk with you today and tell everybody a little bit about what we've been up to with this whole Craft Week thing.
Right, same here, same here. I'm really excited and I'm looking forward to learning more about how your curation process works.
Yeah, and I'd love to tell you about it. I'm curious, what is I know we've talked about this off camera a little bit, but your connection to the craft maker artist world?
Yeah, so it started about 10 years ago. I was actually more interested in kind of like the entrepreneur side. I was in grad school studying my MBA and I was bored to death. So I honestly wanted to learn more about like small businesses. And so I was, again, studying my MBA program with an emphasis in marketing. And I decided to do an internship with a small boutique, a vintage boutique. It was owned by this really talented Black woman. And I was just so inspired by that I kind of kept on that trajectory, focusing on like working with women in small business. And so from there, once I moved to the Bay, that is when I learned more about the craft space. And I started to attend the larger craft shows. And as I was there, when I first started, I think maybe like a year after moving to the Bay, I have this pretty large network of women that were business owners, that were making jewelry or own their own boutique, handbags, like clothing, like you name it. And so I would go into these larger craft shows, and it was a little bit disappointing for me not to see as much diversity. So I kind of started my own marketplace, and it was a marketplace that spotlighted and showcased Black women makers. And so that was called Make Do Market. It was in San Francisco Bay Area, so mostly focused on spotlighting the local artists there. And it was just a really great experience, really good space. And then that kind of led me into more curation and kind of really like consulting and working with some of the makers in the area and kind of providing them resources so that they could be able to participate in some of the larger shows. I also worked and spoke with some of the larger craft shows in the Bay Area about how to increase the number of people of color, specifically Black women in their space. And so it was just kind of like things kind of just naturally grew from there. What about you? Tell me about your story.
Oh, I love that. So I guess it sounds like we're sort of two different sides of the equation in a way. I mean, there's so many overlaps between our missions, I think, at this point, but you've got that sort of marketing background, and I'm more of a maker, I guess. So I actually studied craft at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I graduated in 2012 with a BFA and have been working in craft ever since then. I focused mostly in glass blowing when I was studying, but have branched out quite a bit since. But I worked as a glass blower and still work as a glass blower, have been for about the last 10 years. And so I spent a few years traveling around doing different craft fairs like ACC, and you know, popping up and selling my wares on the street, and had a great time with that. And now I'm actually sort of taken a little bit of a break from blowing glass, and I'm focusing more on my painting career. And as of late, a new venture called Crafting the Future, which is an organization I started with my friend Annie Evelyn and a group of like-minded artists at Pemberton School of Craft in North Carolina. And we're working to diversify the fields of art, craft, and design, not just in the marketplace scene, but just the world at large. You know, we want to see more people of color represented in craft schools and museums and galleries, just in the field on all levels, really, trying to, you know, preserve a more accurate story, because that's, you know, what we're doing really is we're making these objects that will serve as a time capsule for our culture. And so similar to like what you're doing, trying to see more Black women in the field, we're trying to do a similar thing. And so that's kind of the eye that I guess I've been bringing to this project a little bit. And obviously, yeah. I'm sure same for you, right?
Right. So what's it like kind of being on both sides, like maker and kind of, you know, advocate? Like, what's that like for you?
You know, it's interesting. It's new for me, this whole, well, certainly curation, but also, yeah, advocacy, you know, and thinking outside of myself and trying to, you know, sort of pick my head up from the studio workbench and look at the world and try and make a change out there. And it's been really, really rewarding doing that sort of work. And yeah, I think it's a benefit for me to sort of have eyes on both sides of the equation. Because I've, you know, been in these spaces and seen the glaring lack of diversity, and, you know, been the token Black person, the token queer person so many times. And, you know, I say that this work is new for me, but you know, the more I think about it, it's like just being present in these sorts of spaces that are so largely dominated by straight white people. that is activism in itself, I think, you know, just making space and taking up space. I know I don't have to tell you or anybody who's watching this really, but we're in the middle of a civil uprising. Our nation is sort of re-examining, its attempts at racial justice and inclusivity. And I think that that's disseminating to all sorts of different systems and organizations, from, obviously the police and the government all the way down to craft marketplaces.
Yeah.
And it might feel like a small way to be making a difference, but I don't think it is. I think it's, making changes on all levels is sort of how we're going to progress as a society. But that's one thing I've been seeing that's been very interesting in the craft space right now. Have you picked up on any exciting new trends, or?
Kind of piggybacking on what you were just talking about, just like seeing more people get the recognition that they deserve, and just like a lot of people have been doing this work like you've been talking about for a really long time, and they're just now, getting to a point where they're feeling good about the progress that they've made. And I think it's really great to see people being more people of color being showcased. It's just kind of unfortunate that it took this, to get us here. So that's something that I wanted to say that I'm excited about, but also like it's about time. It's long overdue.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe this would be a good time to talk about our curation process a little bit. So for me, when I was coming up with this list of artists to participate in Craft Week, I was able to pull a lot of artists from my personal Rolodex, so to speak. Like I was saying, I've been on the scene for a little bit, and there are not a ton of Black and brown makers in the American studio craft scene, obviously. So when I meet one, whether it's at a craft school or Glass Art Society conference or a Zoom call, we're sort of instantly bonded. There's so much that doesn't even need to be said that is understood about our shared experience as makers and creatives of color. It's like, oh, you're a Black glassblower, you're my cousin. it's like
Yeah.
that. And so Tanya Crane, for instance, she's one of the artists that I selected for Craft Week. I don't know Tanya super well, but I feel a strong connection to her. We met. She's a metalsmith who I had the pleasure of meeting at Penland, which is a craft school that I talk about a lot. It's in North Carolina, and I'm sure a lot of people in this scene already know about it, so I don't need to tell you too much. But I'm just going to read you real quick a blurb from Tanya's website. Tonya Crane's artwork dwells within a liminal existence between prejudice and privilege. Reared in a white middle-class suburb of Los Angeles, Crane's experience with Blackness was limited to visiting her father in South Central Los Angeles. Her dual existence has deeply informed her practice and has led to 4 distinct bodies of work, which she goes on to list. And you can check out those bodies of work on her website in a little bit in this selection that she's provided us for Craft Week. And that statement there just really resonates with me personally. I think that the duality that permeates through her work does something really beautiful. It bridges seemingly disparate worlds, marginalized and privileged, precious and non-precious, Black and white. And it feels particularly potent today as our nation, again, is re-examining its attempts at racial justice, inclusivity, accessibility, all those sorts of things. You know what, I'll just go ahead and tell you about another artist, because I think that her work does something sort of similar without even really trying to. So Nikki of Nikki and Mallory, she's one of the artists that I stumbled upon while researching new artists for Craft Week. So I never met Nikki before, but I'm so glad to have discovered her. She makes these gorgeous leather bags that don't appear on the surface to make any sort of social commentary, but her name, the company name, Nikki and Mallory, comes from combining the artist's nickname and her last name, suggesting sort of like 2 sides of the same person, or 2 halves of a whole. And this branding is on point because her style is sort of this like perfect mashup of like bohemian artsy and like modern dope Black queen. And so I think there's a thread there. It's like similar to Tanya's work in a way, bridging worlds. I think Nikki's does this as well. It's like I could see the Olsen twins or Megan the Stallion, you know, shopping these bags. And like, who doesn't want to live in that world, you know, where the Olsen twins and Megan are going out together?
Yeah, I got to see a sneak peek as we were curating together, and you picked some really great artists. I'm gonna share about two that are in the Bay Area. I really want to share about Candace Cox from Candid Art. She is a single mom of a toddler, who I'm a toddler mom too. So we actually met when she was a vendor at my Make Do Market. And she's always just had like this really great spirit. And she's always super inspiring about like being just creative and thinking outside the box. Like she really inspired me in the way that she talks about just like how she's always wanted to expand and do more. And she's not afraid to kind of like switch things up. So she's originally started as a jewelry maker, and she expanded to a kids line where she was making like kids quilts and quilted jackets. And I actually have one that I purchased. She designs them all herself, and they're reversible.
Gorgeous.
It's like reversible, has an African inspired fabric. And so again, she designs all of that herself. And then she works with her seamstress out of her studio in Oakland. So yeah, I really enjoy Candace's work. And I know that other people will love it as well. The other person I wanted to share about is also in the Bay Area. She is working with her partner. Her name is Monique Little. She started, and I believe she's fairly new to the makerspace. I knew her before, and I randomly came across the new shop, which is Moja Objects. I hope I'm saying that right. But I came across the shop, and I'm like, this is just making these beautiful ceramics. So they're really fun, bold, you know, lively. Kind of reminds me of something that would be like in my grandmother's kitchen, but like a little fun modern twist to it. I love the beautiful colors. I wish I had something here to kind of show, but I know that she'll do really well as well, and people will enjoy her work. I'm really just excited to see new people kind of popping into the space and creating really beautiful things.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I love those two artists that you talked about just now, and all of the ones that you chose. It's going to be really exciting to see a more diverse offering this year, you know, and hopefully we're setting the tone for many years to come, the rest of the years. In fact, it's like, that's something that I've been talking about a lot lately when people are asking me to participate in things like this is, you know, let's not make this a singular event. Let's sort of fold this type of thinking into our practice in perpetuity. You know, let's make the changes that we want to see in our field and commit to making those changes on a sustained level.
And I don't know about you, but when I was reaching out to people, like, just like you said, like people are really excited to participate. So I hope it's a good opportunity for them. I know that things are a little weird right now, and trying to figure out and explore new spaces to like showcase your work has been difficult for a lot of people. So I'm really, you know, grateful for the timing of this and being able to offer this opportunity to a great group of makers.
Yeah, likewise. Let's hope that everybody sells this week.
Yeah, buy stuff.
Yes. Oh, well, Morgan, it's been so nice talking with you.
Same. I really enjoyed talking with you too, Corey.
All right.
And you're in the show, right?
I'm in the show. That's right.
You're in the show. So
I'm in there. Yeah, I've got some prints available.
I wish you much success. I hope it's a great show for you as well.
Thank you.
All
right. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great. Great. Well, Sorry, there was a little bit of a technical, I had a little bit of a technical problem there, but I'm glad to be back. And I hope everyone enjoyed that conversation between Morgan and Corey. They were really incredible partners. And I will also put a plug in that Corey does have work in the show, and I hope you check all the work out. Now, I'm really also very pleased to introduce our next conversation is between Nate Watson and Ginge Lackey. And Nate and Ginge are both San Francisco based, or Bay Area, San Francisco based artists. And one of the strange benefits of this strange world has been actually meeting people and connecting with people that you might not otherwise. And I've had the good fortune, Ginge and I have been obviously connected through the American Craft Council. She's a very well-known artist, is represented in many collections, and is also part of the American Craft Council College of Fellows, and someone who I follow on social media. And Nate Watson is someone who I was recently introduced to, who we actually have some fellow friends in common. And it's been an incredible opportunity to get to know Nate and really learn about the many hats that Nate wears as an educator, an artist, and the executive director of Public Glass. And before I turn over the conversation to the two of them, really to talk about what is happening right now in San Francisco in their own work, I'd also just like to note that Public Glass also has a shop within the American Craft Council, within Craft Week. So I am now going to turn it over to Nate and Ginge.
Hello, happy to be here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here too. How are you, Ginge?
Really good, and this is all very inspiring.
Yeah. So we woke up with an orange sky today, and I think that although this isn't ideal, it definitely frames our conversation and puts everything in perspective. You know, today is not like any day that anybody has ever remembered here in the Bay Area. And I think that this year has been, interesting, to put it mildly. So what's going on in your world?
Well, it's interesting you start speaking in those terms, because this world today is nothing like I've ever experienced. It's all very, very different. And it's full of worry and angst, but there are many, many glimmers of hope. And I have a phrase that I really like that I found somewhere, David Orr at Oberlin College: hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And I think artists and makers roll up their sleeves all the time. Science tells us about why this is happening to our sky, why it's a dark rust red color. Maybe they'll figure it out. Actually, there is information online already. But artists and makers will tell us about who we are on the inside and what imagination can do and what innovation can do. That's what I see in this whole week.
Yeah, I could not agree more. One of the questions, posed to us is, how are we adapting to this time of COVID, and what's happening in the Bay Area with all the things that we're all going through. And when you talk about rolling up the sleeves, I feel like that's what Bay Area makers do already. To survive in an economy that privileges tech over making. Those of us who are still here definitely have a backbone. We have a work rate. We have a way and a perspective. And earlier Corey was talking about making space. I feel like as a Bay Area artist, a Bay Area maker, one of the things, that we're always concerned with is space. San Francisco is 7 miles by 7 miles. It's a small place. It's a desirable place. This is a place where people really want to live. And that pressure, alongside a culture that, again, privileges tech, has caused artists, not only to be diminished in certain capacities, but those of us who are still here are working so hard. And I think that this moment is a moment that we're made for. It requires a pivot, an innovation, a collaboration. And these are things that we've been practiced at every day. Every day when we wake up, it's about resolve. And although, we want to, you don't always just want to struggle, you want to thrive. But this is like one of those unique moments where, I feel equipped for this moment. I feel like the folks here at Public Glass and my collective and our Bay Area ecosystem are ready to take this on. And we're doing it together, really by coming together in groups. Can you talk a little bit about, what your community is doing?
Well, I reached out to a few friends and asked them. The first person I'd like to just mention is Cheryl Riley. She's actually from the San Francisco Bay Area, a dear friend, wonderful artist. She moved to New York. She said to me that my life has gone online in a much bigger presence than before the pandemic and before all of this started. So I was curious about that, because that I have been hearing from other artists and makers and friends. And one of the things she did was a time-lapse video of how she makes what she calls sculptures in the form of necklaces. And she put those videos up online, and actually somebody bought one. And then she has another aspect, which is she's an advisor to clients who are looking for things. And so that person became a client. But then she also has the flip side of that, and she represents artists. She looks around for artists, all kinds of artists, but a lot of artists and makers of color, and she represents their work. And she also then tries to connect the clients to the artists. So she's expanded not only her own making and putting that online, but doing that. Another thing that she did is, I'll say this quickly, she gathered some digital natives, some young ones around her, because she's trying to build her tech capability and her online capability and presence. And she calls herself a digital immigrant. But what she has is a lot of information about how to do your profession and your career. So she helps them by being a mentor. Again, a flip-sided activity that she's organized about invoices, contracts, how to present your work, how to relate to galleries and to clients, all of those kinds of things young people and people new to the field need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, before March, Public Glass was really focused on like hands-on experiences, events, bringing people together. We have a culture of collaboration within our glass community, even within the process. We always work together. We work in teams, and we always are involved and engaged in bringing people into our group, but also giving everyone the skills, everyone the confidence. We're building the team constantly. And I feel like, in this moment where everything has shifted, we're taking that collaborative spirit and exporting it even more. And it's funny that you mentioned the online stuff. A lot of us got into this because we're really connected to the hands-on experience. And yeah, exactly. But we can't come together. And so I think this moment is a time where we can get good at the things that we never considered before. We're really immersing ourselves and connecting in different ways. And my hope is that we're going to come out of this with skills that we never intended to have, that will amplify the things that we already know, that will reinvent and reimagine the things that we've been concerned with for decades and decades. So hopefully we'll be able to reach more people. Everyone learns in a different way. We all consume information in a different way. And I think that, this technology and craft, this is a perfect time for it to come together. So in a time where we're thinking that maybe we're operating at a deficit, where we're fearful, where, the world is in chaos, I'm hoping that we can build skills in the same way that we really engage in materials every day personally. We really get into our work, and every day as artists, we learn their challenges and we get through them to get to the end goal. But that process never ends. And so socially, I feel like we can merge what we do with material and how we engage our studios, but also do this on a bigger scale and connect in ways that we never, ever intended. And so a lot of what we're doing here at Public Glass is trying out things virtually. We're learning to teach in different ways. We're learning how to articulate our messaging in new ways. We're articulating our process in new ways. And, also in this moment, people are listening. And that's what I'm really, really super excited about. I think just the way that this this craft week has come together and brought new voices to the table. People are looking, they're doing the work. And in the same way that artists have to do the work to make it, I feel like those structures and institutions that support us are asking themselves hard questions. And I'm really, really hopeful that we're going to break the status quo, that we're going to break through barriers. Yeah, go ahead.
The internet is actually bringing many, many more people online.
Mm-hmm.
So with artists and makers looking to the internet and tech to give them more opportunities, there is a bigger audience out there. And galleries are informing me that they're selling more work online. And one of my young friends who recently graduated from UC Davis, Sierra Kennedy, went online and took a 6-week course with 5 other small fledgling businesses in the creative area and built up her capability. And she said, actually, the strange thing, locked in her place and being online, she sold more this year so far than she did last year at this point. So it's helping her quite a bit. And she said, what we really need to do is learn and grow like crazy in our artwork and in our lives.
Absolutely. I feel that completely. A lot of times it's hard for us to sit down and work on our websites, to draw and to think about what we're going to do. And not only are we locked down in a different way, but I think people are consuming things in a different way as well. We started a product line last year here at Public Glass called PG Originals. We brought in an incredible artist designer named D.H. McNabb to design a new line for us. And we gave ourselves a year plus to kind of get it off the starting line. And, starting in March, we were stuck without classes. We no longer had to do the registrar work. There weren't people in the workshops every day. So we really got to focus on this, and we got to grow faster in a very specific way that we just hadn't ever before. And I feel like a lot of artists are developing, again, just new skills and new lines and new strategies that they had not considered before.
So another friend of mine, Karen Hampton, who's actually in the craft marketplace this week, she told me that she's doing webinars with artists and makers of color, and that they are sponsored by the Craft Futures Fund. You may be familiar with that.
Yeah.
And so there are these opportunities that are kind of popping up. Also, people are making kits to sell. They're doing workshops as they're producing and promoting and presenting their own creative works.
Absolutely. And, one thing, we're all having a hard time. We're all struggling with social unrest. But one thing that I'm excited about is this, there's space now to have hard conversations, and that artists are really responding to what's happening out there. And
Right.
so not only are the conversations expanding, but the work is expanding, and there's space for this work. People aren't rejecting this, saying, oh, this is too serious. This isn't why I consume this craft. This is not what I want to look at. People are actually looking for signifiers of what's happening.
Right.
They want memories.
Nate, I have to interrupt because I would like to expand this conversation, and I look forward to talking with you again, but I think we've run out of time.
Of course we did. Of course. It was nice talking with you.
That was a great conversation. And 2 plugs I'd like to put in. The work from the Public Glass studio that Nate was talking about is for sale during Craft Week. And I would encourage you all to check it out. It's beautiful. Not that I'm supposed to have favorites. I'm not allowed to have favorites. Nate, something else that Nate didn't talk about that we had talked about that I also just want to give a shout out to is that, in addition to artists kind of recalibrating, all organizations are, which of course includes the American Craft Council, but in particular it includes smaller community-based organizations like Public Glass that actually are really doing work on the ground to introduce maybe the first time someone ever encounters craft or making. And one of the new models of working is really thinking about fundraising and philanthropy. And Nate and a coalition of 6 glass studios from around the United States, including one here in Minnesota, Foci, Urban Glass, Starworks Glass, North Carolina Glass Center, Glassroots, Foci, and Firebirds actually have started a campaign in an organization called givetoglass.org. I'm just going to show it on my phone here. And this is a way in which you can actually contribute to smaller organizations collectively, and they're working collectively to raise support. So he didn't mention that, but I just wanted to throw that in. So next, I'm really excited to introduce Karen Adams, who is the curator of art at the Oakland Museum of California. And I will say the Oakland Museum of California is one of my favorite museums, and they do remarkable work, really rooted in their community, and really interesting curatorial work, looking at all of the different intersections of kind of making and culture. And Karen's going to talk with Morgan Abbott and Charmaine Vegas about what they're seeing in the marketplace today. So I turn it over to them.
Hi, everybody. This is Karen, curator of art at the Oakland Museum, and so honored to be here to kick off Craft Week. I'm joined by Morgan Abbott of Mo Murray. She makes handmade bags in Oakland, and Charmaine Vegas of Bless the Theory, a jeweler out of Long Beach. Charmaine and Morgan, you're both artists working in really different ways, translating your unique perspectives into amazing handcrafted objects. And I'm wondering, how do you hope your work will shape the experience of the people that move through the world with it?
I think for me, when I'm making something, I always start with how it's going to function. I started making bags because for me, I'm pretty small. And so when I hold it by the handle, it's always dragging the ground. So I started making bags so that I can carry groceries home comfortably. So I think for me, I just really, at the end of the day, if everything has gone well, people won't think about it while they're using it, but maybe when they see it sitting on a chair or something, it might bring back a fun trip that they took, or maybe a picnic at the park.
What about you, Charmaine?
Well, my work is themed around our flaws, and I think what I hope most for the end user or wearer is to feel seen, to feel it's okay to move through this world as they are. And from our talk last night, I think what I've learned this year is to surrender. And I think that as well goes into to surrender into all of your flaws and whatnot. And when I make each ring or necklace, my hope is that when the end wearer is wearing that, they are I would say reminded of their humanity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're both of you are working with such really divergent materials. It's an interesting thing to have you in the same conversation, but it's important. I think your making is so connected to your to the experience of your bodies and how to translate that into materials. Like even though and this is something that I think that's really so exciting about the marketplace broadly this year is all the different perspectives and materiality and the incredible individual expression, and we had a conversation yesterday about how important it was, whether or not the people who are, holding your things really understand the context and the genesis of all that making, whether it's just how functional the bag is, or how beautiful the earrings might be. And it seems like you both had some sense that it's okay for somebody to kind of put their own perspective into the thing that you've made after you've released it out into the world. But that knowing its origins are in ideas, both pragmatic and theoretical, was also important.
Right.
Yeah. Morgan, do you imagine that that the bags that you're making have a life that you can't predict for them when you're putting them together? Does that come into play?
I hope so. Yeah. Sometimes I have one idea in mind for what a bag will do. And then when I'm at the craft council in person, I'll meet someone and I have like the dot kit that I use for toiletries. And someone will tell me, oh, this will be perfect for my lunch bag. And it's just like little simple things where I had no idea, what someone else would do with it. It's fun.
And Charmaine, now that so much of our lives has gone inside, and maybe meeting with clients to show them your work in a physically present way has changed. Like, how has it been difficult to shift away from the one-on-one interactions that you might get with somebody interested in your jewelry?
I wouldn't say it's been, a challenge or anything. However, I would say it has encouraged a shifting in how I reach out. And I would say that I feel I've gotten more attention this time, which I feel a lot of artists of color more say have gotten a lot more of attention, and it's a weird thing to navigate, considering what it took.
Right.
However, I will take it as long as it's coming from a sincere area,
Mm-hmm.
and not, out of trend or, hot topic.
Right.
So
yeah.
I feel that I'm still able to meet new, I would say commissioners. It's just a little different. It's just not, one-on-one. And
right.
with that, yeah, I'm definitely okay with that.
And what about you, Morgan? Do you feel a disconnect now that the public isn't sort of meeting you face to face?
I think it's certainly shifted, but I am enjoying everything that's happening online, like, being able to do this show still in a different way, and the interactions on Instagram. Like, I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can interact with people, which has been great. But I do always miss seeing people in person, for sure.
Right. Well, when we all talked, I was lamenting not being able to go out and visit your studios and hold the things that you're making and know what your bags smell like, for instance, or what it feels like to put a pair of earrings on. But the marketplace is so exciting this year, and there's so much dialogue between all of the artists that are participating. What are you most excited about getting to participate in this?
Well, for me, this is my first year, and even though I am a a member, I have never really felt truly involved, and just that the fact that I'm here is it's just very exciting for me. I feel this is just the start of new opportunities in the craft market world.
I think
Morgan?
I'm really excited to shop. I can't wait to go through the marketplace and see what everyone's been making. I find it really inspiring, and the thought that whatever money I can scrape together, like, this is where I want to spend it. I want to support other makers too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's totally energizing. Well, I think with that, we're out of time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
This is, okay, I was on mute. It was a great conversation, and I love that last line, whatever I can scrape together, this is where I want to spend my money. I am really pleased to introduce Nicole Warner Kelly, who has been with our Emerging Artists Program here at the American Craft Council. And Nicole and I are going to talk a little bit in a similar way to what Karen and crew did, just about where she's at. She's an artist who lives in the Napa area, and she founded a company, Yolotli, back in 2012, which was really centered around sustainability and sustainable fashion and sustainable lifestyle. And so I'm excited to talk with her just a little bit today and kind of end our conversations with artists. And do I see? There's Nicole. Hi, Nicole. I'm gonna change my screen so I can see you. Now I see you. You're next to me. Well,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
So great to have you here, and so good to see you. Wish we were seeing each other in person. I guess that is the mantra of our time, right?
That is so true. I know. I really missed the ACC shows, I have to say, this year.
Yeah. So Nicole, one of the things I wonder if we could just start talking about, whenever I meet an artist, I'm at a show, one of the first things I like to ask them, and I know it's kind of a daunting question when they're standing there trying to sell their work, is to really, how did they begin? Like, what is their origin story? How did you find your way to craft?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Germany, and I always kind of made things, I guess. My entire family's very crafty. My sister is a master wood carver in Germany, and my grandfather was so many things, a baker, a ceramicist, a woodworker, like everything. It was just kind of part of our family. And my mom, she just kind of always took her time with 4 kids somehow to teach me anything I wanted to learn. But she's also very crafty, so knitting and crocheting and embroidering and that kind of stuff just kept me busy through my childhood. And it was also part of school. So that's just been really ingrained since a very young age, I think. I can't even remember, maybe 4 or 5 or so when I started making things. And then also my interest over the years has just kind of grown into textiles and textile techniques, and at some point making clothes, which were like somewhat well-fitting for dolls and stuff. And eventually it turned into a sweater for myself, all those kind of things. So I guess I also vividly really remember clothes from my childhood. That I can really remember what they looked like. And I remember photos of myself that I can't find right now, but where I'm wearing those pieces, and how I really remember how much I loved them and how I felt in them. And they all had a little bit of an heirloom feeling to them, I guess, because they were already passed down through all my 13 cousins and my siblings. And then after me, they were passed down to my younger sister and my younger brother sometimes. yeah, so textile, fabrics, yarns, they've just always been there. And then at some point, I wanted to study fashion design, but then I also knew that I wanted to live abroad. And for some reason, I thought international business was very helpful for that. So I studied that, and I lived and worked in Germany and some parts of Latin America for a long time, and eventually moved to the US.
I think one of us may have frozen.
Sarah, this is Jason. I'm going to take Nicole out of the meeting here and see if we can get her to reconnect.
Okay, we're gonna take a minute and see if we can get Nicole to reconnect, because we had one of those frozen moments. But the program, I'll just say while we're getting Nicole back, one of the programs that the American Craft Council has started years ago is called, we have an Emerging Artist Program. Used to be known as Hip Hop, now we call it the Emerging Artist Program, which is actually an opportunity where artists who are at the early stages of developing their business can participate in an American Craft Council show with a group, a cohort of other artists, in a smaller way, as a way to kind of test the market. Nicole, welcome back.
Oh, what happened? All of a sudden, everything was gone.
I think you might have frozen. It could be the air. I'm not sure where you are. Are you in Napa as we speak?
Yes, I am in Napa, and it's probably been the weirdest day of my life, I have to say. Finally, after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we had a little bit of daylight, but it feels like a solstice, or no, sorry, an eclipse. It's the weirdest thing. So I don't know where we got cut off, and I'm so sorry, because it was perfectly fine for the entire time that you were all talking.
You were talking about how you kind of fell into what you were doing, and while you were away, I was talking a little bit about the ACC's Emerging Artist Program, which might actually be a good segue just to hear about how you started your business and how you found how we came together.
Oh yes, okay. So I don't know where it all got cut off, but eventually I moved to the US and I bought myself a sewing machine, and it's kind of an old heavy duty Singer machine that my mom used to have, and it was like a little bit nostalgia about, probably too. And I found a pattern making class and a fashion design class or school in San Francisco, and started taking classes after work. I guess that was also just around a time where I was so shocked about the consumerism and throwaway culture that is, I think, more extreme here than back in Europe. Or it was just a time that I just kind of got aware of it, and I started making things, and I thought, I just want to make things that last. I want to make things that are timeless. I started doing that for myself, and eventually started knitting hats for kids, and started designing a Japanese style apron for kids that was made in like a jeans kind of style. It looked really heavy duty, and it could like probably survive pretty much anything. And in 2012, I started my business with those pieces. It was really funny because it was a booth of hats and aprons. That was it. And then the ACC I came to because I used to work for the Grand Hand Gallery, but here in Napa. And so Ann Pfeiffer, the founder of the Grand Hand Gallery and my former boss and now friend, she invited me to come to St. Paul to the ACC show. We would do our yearly purchasing there, and she would introduce me to all the artists and also donate my time to the ACC. So I helped out setting up, or not setting up, but help with the coordination of the make rooms and those kind of things. I met some of the staff, and I just felt like I felt like home somehow. I don't know if that was the Minnesota feel too. It has a little bit of feeling of Germany to me. So anyways, in the meantime, the Grand Hand Gallery closed. I developed my business further and eventually went to this ACC show in San Francisco and ran into some staff that I knew. And Pamela Diamond, she took me around and introduced me to, at the time was called Hip Hop, the Emerging Artist Program. I had not heard of it. And it was really fascinating to me. And she's like, yeah, you should apply, because I told her what I was doing. And so I applied. And my first show was the ACC in St. Paul in 2018.
That's great. So I'm curious, we unfortunately have a few minutes left, but I'm curious about two things. One, I think we have been talking about these strange times, and you mentioned the strange times. So I am curious how the last 6 months have affected you, and how you're doing, what advice you might have for others. What has been successful or what has been a struggle?
It's quite strange times, I guess. It's like just repeating what everyone else has already said. The past 6 months were a bit stressful for us because we have an 11-month-old to the day. And my husband has a creative practice too. So it's been hard for us to make time to work on pieces. But luckily we decided last year when I was still pregnant to move our studios into our backyard. And so we have two very small but spaceful studio spaces where we can make everything. So we basically just drop the fork at the lunch table and can go outside, and then we split the day. So we both can make work. And what I've been doing is I just really had to slow down everything, which kind of is what I've always wanted to do, because I was kind of making things, because everything I make is handmade. And I've been trying to work with smaller factories to help me sew my designs, but I kind of slowed down completely because my husband has asthma, so we can't really expose ourselves. So I basically started making everything by hand and took more time for every single piece. And I'm really doing now what I've always wanted to do, because I'm not in a rush to run from show to show. The downside, obviously, is that my business has slowed down a lot. And so there's a good and a negative side, I guess, about it. And if I had a little bit more time to really wrap my head around, my website update and all that kind of stuff, then that would probably help. But the ACC show is amazing that that's virtual and online this year. So I guess that's something, it seems like that I've worked for all year without knowing.
Right. And just one last question. I mean, it's probably maybe too premature to know, but can you imagine, as we say, like on the other side of this, has your thinking about your work changed at all? Or are you just kind of staying in the present?
Yeah, that is true. So interestingly, I'm doing all the things that I've always dreamt of doing. I always wanted to work super locally, which my new collection that I just uploaded onto the virtual ACC marketplace, it's all made here in Napa. And I worked with a natural vat dyer here in Napa. She dyed all my fabrics, or most of my fabrics. And I'm working with a friend of mine who does some of my embroideries. So that's what I've always wanted to do, but I didn't have the time to set it up. So I just kind of hustled and made it myself. And obviously I don't want to get into dyeing because that's a whole different story. So I'm kind of building connections so close to home. And I think with everything going on environmentally and social justice and everything, fast fashion just cannot be the future for no one. And this is what was always at the core of my business. And I feel this is maybe the chance that I can build this in, or grow the business in a very sustainable way, and I hope that there on the other side will now also be more people that can appreciate that, because with everything happening right now and the fires, and everyone is a little bit more conscious, I think, about the environment and everything. So I hope when they understand, or when more people will understand, I'll be here doing what I'm liking to do.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think that's a great way. That's a great way to kind of sum up the conversation. And I think this idea of the values, you know, that craft and the handmade and artists like yourself not only bring to the things that you make and the things that we buy, but cause us to think about how we want to live in the world is just really important. So it was great talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. It was exciting to be here.
Forward to seeing you in San Francisco next year.
Yes. Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
So as we kind of move towards the end of the evening, I wanted to actually take an opportunity really to thank everybody and all the participants and the people who have been such amazing colleagues and sponsors of our very first San Francisco Bay Area Craft Week. It really does take a community, and it really does take a big tent. First and foremost, I want to thank the Museum of Craft and Design and a dear colleague, Joanne Edwards, who graciously designed 2 workshops for this week that you may have participated in, as well as just connecting us more deeply and broadly in the Bay Area community. It's an amazing organization. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, and it's very beloved there. And so thank you very much. And then Craft in America for their ongoing commitment to amplifying makers and makers spaces through their work. Their Craft Resources Interactive Map was really critical in helping us better understand the local makers community and culture when preparing for the Bay Area Craft Week. Gravers Lane Gallery for their ongoing support of stellar artists and making stellar work. Such as John Reyes, whose recent exhibition Connectivity was the summer feature at their Philadelphia-based gallery, and they've been a long-time supporter of the American Craft Council. And the Crafters Box, we heard tonight from Ginge about artists who are making kits. Well, the Crafters Box is a really great business that supports making and learning together. And ACC members, you all should have received an invitation for a free digital craft workshop of your choice as part of the Bay Area Craft Week. And lastly, it would not be an American Craft Council show, even digital, if I did not thank the Balvenie, who has been a longtime supporter of the American craft shows with their own deep commitments to craftsmanship. And they have been, like I said, they've been a longtime supporter of our craft shows and most recently of our emerging artist program. So very invested in seeing craftsmanship stay well and alive. They're doing a maker meetup that you can join tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time when ambassadors for the Balvenie single malt Scotch whiskey, Naomi Leslie and Neil Strachan, will tell tales of the distillery and the craftspeople behind one of the most handcrafted single malts in Scotland. Not the same thing as being at a tasting at the show, but perhaps the next best thing. So now I'd like to welcome back Gary Smith to kind of conclude the evening.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the program and maybe learned a few things along the way. You know, with all that we've lost in this COVID times, I think a number of us have learned to take advantage of the opportunity for these kind of intimate conversations, or at least eavesdropping on intimate conversations with some fascinating people. And I think you'll see that you'll have opportunities to do that throughout the rest of this week, and I hope you can take advantage of them. We're going to close the program today with a toast in just a bit to one of the great supporters of American craft and of the ACC. But before that, I want to just take a minute to reiterate something that you all know. The pandemic has really been devastating to artists and makers and arts and cultural organizations all across the globe. And ACC is no exception. We have some big ideas for how we're going to continue and even expand what it is that we do to support makers and the craft movement. We've got ambitious plans for reimagining ACC in the post-COVID world. We believe in particular that craft can be a source of solace and quiet pleasure in a world that we now live in. And we hope that our work will help spread that message. But we need your help to do that. Please join me in making a tax-deductible contribution to the ACC. There's a button on your screen. Please just click on it and be as generous as your circumstances allow. On behalf of all of us at the ACC, thank you. And now the toast. Please welcome my friends Joanne Edwards, the founder and director of the Museum of Craft and Design here in San Francisco, Alex Moses, an artist and entrepreneur and a long-serving ACC trustee, and Barbara Waldman, a life trustee of the ACC, a former chair of the ACC, and one of the great supporters of American craft and the American Craft Council. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara, and I want to add my thanks to you all for joining us here today. I don't know about you, but I've been sitting here with a smile on my face the whole time. And, you know, it's really your support, as Gary said, as members of the Craft Council that makes these programs possible. And I also want to thank the amazing staff at the ACC who did a complete 180 to turn our annual San Francisco Craft Show into this amazing virtual craft week. It's a really small, lean staff, and like most nonprofits, has less than stellar IT capabilities. So what they've done is just, I don't know how they did it, but thank you to them. And of course, a huge thank you to all the incredible artists who've opened their studios, and even more artists who made their creativity and their work available to us online. This would not at all be possible without you. We wouldn't be here, and I wish you all much success this week. As you've seen, the San Francisco Bay Area is a real thriving community for craft, both makers and supporters. Once a year, we usually see artists from all across the country come here to share their work and creativity. And like everyone has said, I will miss seeing you all at the show, or as I have come to think of it, as IRL in real life. But it's even really more wonderful to be joined by everyone who's tuning in nationally to help us champion craft. And so to all the artists who inspire us, and to all of you who join me in being inspired, and to all our sponsors, and to Balvenie, who continues to fill my glass, thank you for your continued support. I toast you.
Thanks, Barbara. I also want to thank everyone at the ACC for this opportunity to work together. The Museum of Craft and Design is so happy to be a partner and sponsor in San Francisco Bay Area Craft Week. We're proud to help salute the artists and makers who at this moment in time are particularly vulnerable, important, and help nourish us now more than ever. We are nothing without your creative force, and it gives me chills to be able to say that. I'm also honored to be able to say a little something celebrating Barbara. Barbara, I promise not to embarrass you too much. It's hard to believe that I've known Barbara for over 30 years. She is a trusted friend and colleague, and I love that we share a deep passion for the arts, most especially craft. And I can easily say she's been one of the most important mentors in my life. Barbara is not only a collector and a supporter, but she's a doer. And often seen with a clipboard or crepe paper in hand, her loyal and steadfast volunteerism is second to none. Always the first one in, always the last one out, and back the next day to help with an event and its aftermath or a special project. We can always count on Barbara. With time and resources, Barbara joyfully supports institutions and institutions and causes for which she is passionate. She has championed the field of craft for decades. So when I co-founded the museum in 2003, Barbara was one of the ones who asked hard questions. Surprisingly, there were no no's in the mix, and then she jumped in to help make it happen. I must have answered her questions correctly because we know how tough she can be. And 16 years later, the museum is thriving with Barbara, one of our fiercest champions. So thank you, Barbara. And congratulations for receiving the much deserved Aileen Osborne Webb Award for Philanthropy. And I will salute you and the ACC.
Barbara, I want to talk about you too.
Oh, gee.
We're all delighted that you are getting the award. You certainly deserve it. And I want to talk about how you champion craft. You understand the issues involved in getting products to market, which is one of the most difficult problems for an artist because it's normally outside of where you're going and what you want to think about, but it's very important. You understand that. You help artists understand that. You put in a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of passion in helping the makers become visible, to get their products out there. You build teams, you ask tough questions, as Joanne says, you solve problems, and in the process, you make friends, and everyone involved in this process has fun. That's a remarkable thing. That's not true of most of our experience, and the fact that the people who come up with what are the tough issues are there to help solve the problems too and make us have fun in it. So Barbara, I'm really delighted. Not only are you my friend, not only are you terrific, but you are a parallel to the ACC. You help us solve the big problems. You're there, you put in the energy, the time, the effort, the devotion, and you make it fun. It's hard to ask for more. So, of course, you should be getting this award. We all toast you.
Thank you all. This is not supposed to be about me here.
Well, I say to Barbara, and I think we all can do a collective toast to craft and to repeat what Joanne said, the artists who fill our lives with joy and make it worthwhile. So thank you all. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the show and you shop often and you shop well, and I wish you all the best in good health, wherever you are.
Hear, hear.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm going
Barbara.
shopping now.
And we're exactly. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for all you've done and do. Good night, everyone.
Night.